What's up, everybody? Brian Tong here. We know it's the Tong Talks. We do everything here, tech, geek, and culture. And this one's all about culture because I've got my man. We like to call him, or the community calls him, Asian Bay, a.k.a. Alexander Hodge from Insecure HBO. My man, thank you so much for just taking the time to just talk and hang out, especially, with everything going on. Even though coronavirus is here, I know you're busy, but thanks for hanging out, man.
Yeah, of course, man. Thanks for having me. It's a good
Yeah.
chance to talk tech and ask you some questions. I need help.
we will talk about some of that. We obviously, I've been a day one fan of Insecure from the start, and so for a lot of people that may have not seen the show, the best way I can describe it, it is the most current, relevant drama, comedy, real, subtle, authentic show that I think we've seen in a long, long time, and we know that you guys have 8 Emmy nominations. It's about time. But I wanted to know, just from your perspective, right out of the gates, with all of your experiences you've had, what was it like working for this specific crew, these specific writers, that instantly makes it different? Because we know this show feels different and hits different. But what about you from your experiences?
Man, straight up, when power is given to black women, you can see the blessings that it creates, man. That's all it is. You have a show that's given license to and power to from one of the greatest networks, and it's given to black women to run, and from the get-go it's already different. It's already looking out for everybody involved. It's already taking care of everyone from top to bottom, bottom to top. It's unreal. Every season that I've been a part of, that I've been able to be a part of, it's sort of like you don't think they can go any further, and then they do. Like, everyone feels like a part of the family. People keep returning, crew, cast, everyone involved. People love being a part of this show. And it's because we have fun and we take care of each other. And I think the story reflects that. I think the chemistry with everyone reflects that. And I mean, if it wasn't a pandemic right now, we'd all be hanging out. We're all still texting and like catching up. But I think it's different to anything that I've ever felt on any other set.
Yeah, I think also people that might be watching, we know we have loyal fans that are part of the Insecure fam that are going to be watching this. People that are like, whoa, wait, is that an Australian accent? I mean, does that, I know you probably get bugged about that all the time or just ask, but people kind of go, oh, whoa, because the American accent flows like butter for you. I mean, is that just something that was easy for you, or are people taken back by that?
Man, I don't know. I feel like people are definitely taken back by it, for sure. Anytime I meet someone on the street, or if I even had some meetings yesterday, and still people sort of like just, I call it the necessary 5 minutes of every introduction where I have to talk about the fact that I'm not American. I'm actually Australian. Um, but it's cool. I take it as a compliment. I take it as though my American accent works. And the worst thing would be if people already know I'm Australian without even hearing me outside of the show. So it's a compliment. I think it comes from growing up watching American TV. I think in Australia we have a lot of American reruns that happen, and a lot of my favorite shows were all American, from The Mentalist to Modern Family and so on. But yeah, then I guess training, theater school also plays a part of it.
So, we're going to jump around a lot of things with you, but, when we stick with the show with Insecure, I think the number one thing that I was excited that you were open at jumping on here and talking, because even today, we still got to talk about that pool scene. I think that is one of the most, not only underrated, but that has never been done in television, period, where you have a scene where multiple minorities are interacting, talking about how they perceive racism, how it's different. And this happens it's just a moment where it starts with the towels, but that was incredible. When I was watching that live, I turned to my girlfriend, I'm like, damn, like no one has ever been able to do that. So I'd love to hear from your perspective, that specific scene, knowing how you guys were kind of putting it together and thinking about it, how did you feel about working in it? And did it even hit you that this has honestly never been done on TV before?
I don't know. We never really think about that while we're shooting, while we're in production. It's not something that sort of crosses our mind. I think what we're focused on first and foremost is telling the story, telling the stories of these characters. And so going into, sorry, I think my girlfriend is dying in the bathroom. I don't know what just happened, but
Hey,
um,
this is the day of COVID, baby.
this exactly,
This
man. This is where we're at. Are you all right, man? I think she's okay.
She's good. She gave you the thumbs up.
Yeah, I gotta check on her, but yeah. Yeah, no, we're not thinking about, being the first to do anything. We're not thinking about, we're not even really thinking about the Emmys. They're great that we finally got, nominated this year and have been considered for it. But, we have been making the show without that. We have been making it without those nominations or anything in the past, and without being considered the first for anything. So it's always about the story first. But I think in watching it in real time, like you said, when we finally aired it and live tweeting on Twitter with all the fans, realizing that we'd never really seen this in mainstream media before. We'd never really seen two minorities discussing their experiences of racism and the nuances between the two. I mean, pardon the term, but it's always so black and white in terms of racism, like it exists or it doesn't. And that's what people argue about, whether it's racist or not. But, we were able to, through being on the show and through having a story of, minorities, we were able to explore the nuances of that and how it's perceived between minorities, which I thought was awesome.
Yeah, I think that what was interesting also is the character of your brother. He reminds me a lot. I grew up in the Bay Area, Northern California. So honestly, a pretty from a ethnic background makeup, predominantly, at least when I was growing up, white and Asian, but now has morphed into more Asian as the predominant, minority race there. Still white. You don't have, the same density of Black population, even Latino population that you have down here in Southern California. But I could literally point at maybe 5 guys that he reminds me of in the Bay Area, which is important because and what I'm going to get to here is that, when you grow up, at least in America, and we can talk about your experiences in Australia. When I was growing up, there weren't many Asian images that you could kind of pull from. So you kind of either lean towards maybe a little bit more white culture, more towards Black culture, maybe a mix of both, depending on what music you listen to, what shows you watch. You didn't, like my nieces now, they kind of have at least a formed identity. There's a lot of food in the culture that is part of it, and but you kind of associate with different things. So you have people that maybe tended to lean towards more, let's call it a westernized way of thinking, and kind of integrate more and not have to think about race as much. And I really thought that was profound that you guys depicted that in your brother, because that is so many people that I know that when we have race discussions, they're like, well, I experienced racism, but not on the level, not at the frequency, and how it weighs on you, and you can choose to ignore it. And so the craziest thing was when Molly said, you only choose to be a person of color when it's convenient for you. I'm like, damn, you guys said that, but it's true. I mean, we've seen it. We're not trying to hate on industries, but I've worked in broadcast and the acting world. We've seen that. We've totally seen that. And so that's why I'm like, damn, this is a show.
It goes back to that sort of, portrayal of, the conversation of racism that we were talking about, where it only exists in binary, where it's only about either it exists or it doesn't. And so the whole devil's advocate part of it, it's a result of assimilation, where, people who experience racism but downplay it and ignore it, or say that it doesn't exist, or put it down to something else. They say, oh, that person's just in a bad mood, or, that was an accident, so on and so forth. They excuse a lot of things because they view racism in the binary. They don't look at different degrees of racism. They don't acknowledge microaggressions, for instance. And, I know a lot of people who are like the brother. It's funny, when we were discussing the episode, we were discussing the scenes when we were in production. There were conversations around of like, oh man, like that's your brother kind of seems like a bit of a dick and so on. Like just like the way that he's written, it's a bit harsh. And I was like, yeah, but I was so vocal about how much I loved that character existed, because like you said, we know them in real life. There are so many out there. And I think showing that conversation for what it is, and showing the damage that it can do in having that point of view. Because no one's going to look at that episode and be like, yeah, man, he was right.
Mm.
But people are going to look at that episode and be like, wow, that's what it sounds like. I think it's really going to sort of, hopefully, people are, I guess, self-reflective enough to have a look at where they might be playing the devil's advocate where it doesn't help. But
yeah,
yeah.
it was one of the highlights of that season. Also, that show, a highlight of, if there's an award that hasn't been given out yet for Emmys, first scene of Asian dude humping on a balcony on mainstream US TV. I think that's definitely one you can put in your pocket.
Yes, yeah. I'm we don't have that category yet, and I don't know why, but when that day comes, hopefully I can be one of those who paved the way.
Absolutely. Now, when you talk about pave the way, the thing that I thought was awesome about your character, Andrew. See, I'm sure people sometimes mix you up and say like Alex Andrew because it's similar. And I wonder
every day.
You know what? Is that actually almost deliberate? So you, the person, melds into the character a little bit because Issa's
the character was always Andrew. Before I even auditioned, the character was called Andrew. Yeah, I think I don't know. I think I give people like sort of 3 strikes, like 3 strikes to get my name right, and then after that, you're just not trying. But yeah, it's I don't know. For me, the name doesn't matter what that person's name is, as long as I can say it, as long as I can get it out my mouth, then I can figure out a way to align myself with it. So
yeah, as I was going on random tangents, the thing that I loved about your characters when I first saw your character on the show, and I don't try to read any spoilers or briefs because I don't want to know really what happens, right? When I first saw your character, the first thing I said when I watched it, I'm like, oh, his character is really interesting, and the reason why is because the character you play is an Asian American male that not represented in TV because of just kind of like your overall vibe, style, mood, energy. It's just not you didn't fit into one of those archetypes that we might be accustomed to. So instantly I was like, oh damn, that is it. As an Asian dude, I'm like, that is so smart that they would do that instead of you're like an Asian guy that you might only find in LA, maybe some in the Bay, maybe some in New York, but not, there might be 5 archetypes out there, but you don't fit any of them. So I'm like, okay, this is really interesting. So that was awesome. And then the other part about it is that, this show is so smart that they kind of put breadcrumbs in the show, and your character, look, although quiet and confident, also outspoken when needed to be, not a common trait seen in even males in TV, which I thought was really interesting. So I'd like to hear, as this character was built and developed, and even during your audition, how did you envision him, and maybe what notes were given to you to kind of build and shape this character?
I firstly had no idea what this dude was going to be. When we auditioned, I had no idea. The only thing I knew was that he was hitting on Molly, and that was it. So I was like, all right, man, like, let me just approach this the way that I would,
Mm-hmm.
and it's sort of, I guess that's when I was able to sort of bring a bit of myself to Andrew and things like that, where like, yeah, like, early on in my career, I would go out for a lot of archetypal roles. I would go out for a lot of IT guys, a lot of tech guys, a lot of accountants and so on. A lot of corporate office people, and man, me with my long hair, I was never booking anything.
You ain't corporate, baby. You ain't corporate.
Exactly. So it got to the point where like anytime there was an audition that came in where I could just be closer to myself, then I would jump at the opportunity. And this was one of those where, it wasn't about what he did for work. I actually didn't know what he did for work until halfway through shooting my episodes in season 3. Yeah, like I didn't know. I just made it up, and then I got told, and I was like, okay, well, I'm wrong. So like it was one of those things where, they give breadcrumbs, but you also, as an actor, you get breadcrumbs. Every time you get a new script, you learn more about the person you're playing. And, I think I definitely learned a lot when we started season 4, when we learned more about his family. And, and you know what Asian families are like. We don't talk about things You know, we don't explore history. We don't believe in mental illness. That's just like that's what Asian families do. You know, it's all about productivity, right? So, it's a lot of it comes from that. Andrew is very calm and easygoing, and he doesn't talk much, which is refreshing. It's kind of cool, but it's also toxic in its own way.
Mm.
We explored that. I think it was episode 4, where Andrew just won't talk about his family, and I think that's also a lot of us as well. So it was like as cool. Like Andrew seems really cool because he wears nice clothes and
Oh, he
he
wears he wears all the kicks, man.
exactly, man. He's got his
I
Union
see.
Jays. He's calm in his Valentino jackets. He seems like he's got it all together until he doesn't, because the flip side of that cool, calm demeanor is he doesn't actually know how to communicate,
Mm.
um, and be vulnerable at times. So I think it's easy to look at him as though he's this cool new guy. And yes, we haven't seen that before. But he's also still human, also still has his flaws that we should explore as well. Like he's still very much, a victim of his environment as much as he is a testament of it.
I thought was also interesting though is that you put Alex, sorry, Andrew. See what you did now? I'm thinking about it, right? You put Andrew next to Molly. Molly is a power character. She is a
Yeah.
strong black woman. You put Andrew next to her, but what I found interesting is through the show, and your character kept on saying, like, basically, hey, over here, make time for me. Hey, like, we're in a relationship. This is not about your world. And finally, in season 4, it was kind of like, okay, I've done this 2 or 3 times. You still haven't been listening to me. And it's not like the thing that's interesting, it's not like it's overt. If someone looked back at season 3 and 4, they would never say that, oh, um, Andrew and Molly got in a fight. They would just be like, oh, they had ups and downs, because the way that your character approached it would be like, hey, like this is going on, just to let you know, which is actually a good thing, which guys don't do. And then finally you're like, okay, this ain't working. And Molly's like, oh my gosh. So, is that, or to me, that's unique in a character being portrayed by you, just because she is so powerful, right? She's the type of woman that would just
Yeah.
step over any man. But although you may come off as calm and, well, let's say more introverted when it's time, Andrew steps up and he put her in her place. That's Molly
Yeah.
doesn't get put in her place that much.
Yeah, he definitely checks her. And he was checking her before they got in a relationship, in season 3. And I think that was part of the draw of him for Molly, was that he is somebody that won't be steamrolled by her. He's somebody that can sort of match her personality. Um, I think it is really cool to see that. And I think, it's also really cool to have that kind of, barometer to be able to look at a character and say, oh, okay, cool. That's what willing to communicate looks like. That's
Mm.
what willing to stand up for yourself in a relationship looks like. And I think for both guys and girls who are in relationships or are exploring relationships, one thing that I was constantly reminded of, and while we were shooting, and I want I wanted people to be aware of while they were viewing it, was that Andrew and Molly are two people who are exploring a serious relationship, who haven't necessarily experienced serious relationships before. So there are mistakes that are made. There are faux pas that happen, but the willingness to learn, the willingness to grow, the willingness to commit to these relationships and to make it serious is what drives it. And I think, like you said, with Andrew, standing up for himself, and then getting to a point where it's not working and having to go further, is that he's not checking out of the relationship. He's constantly trying to check in, and that was really cool to be able to see in I mean, ultimately to be able to see that in an Asian guy, to
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
to see this level of sort of like, yes, it's a half-hour comedy, but the relationship is serious. The character is serious. And we don't really get that opportunity to see that often. And so I thought it was really awesome to be able to watch that all happen.
The internet does exist, so we can find out a lot of things about people, and we know that, at least I'm not trying to dig in your current status, but you have experience in interracial relationships, right?
Mhm.
And so, how did that help you, or maybe how much of that do you actually bring into your character? Is it maybe a subconscious thing that because you've had these experiences, it flows through you in some of these experiences in a show which is predominantly black cast?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely informs. I think we are the sum of our experiences, right, as people, and so having experience informs the way I approach the role, and maybe it's not coincidence that I ended up with the role because of my experiences, but I think it was never anything sort of intentional. It was never anything like, okay, my girlfriend is black, therefore I know what dating a black woman takes. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, totally, totally.
black people are not a monolith, therefore black women are not a monolith. Um, that would be like saying like, oh, okay, someone's dated Brian before, therefore like they know what dating Alexander is going to be like. It takes away from it entirely. But I will say I was able to I guess understand what comes with dating, interracially in a different ethnicity. What comes with dating somebody? I'm Australian, so even dating an American, I know what it's like to date an American now. Like there are so many different ways to look at it that helped inform me. Um, it definitely helped when it came to learning the wobble. I will say my
Like, I
having a
got
black
this. I
girlfriend
got
really
this.
helped when it came to having to learn the wobble. But yeah, like I think it's just incidental things more than anything intentional.
What is it? Yeah, there's just this is why the show is so crazy, and I'm glad it's getting all the attention now. It's just such a nuanced show that is, and again, it's a half-hour show. It's not like an hour show. People want the show to be longer, right? You see it all the time. Make the episodes 1 hour
Yeah,
long, and there's
yeah. Twitter's loud about that.
super loud about it. But in that time, and even though right there's maybe a 2 year hiatus depending on how busy people's schedules are and what happens, um, this is as real as of a show as there is now. The other thing that I want to talk about in the show is that when we talk about the nuance and how smart it is, they dealt with Nathan's character in season 3. And when I watched season 3, if you're kind of paying attention, I said, I think he's going through some mental health stuff. And you guys never
Mm.
talk about it, you never bring it up until season 4, which almost is, we know mental health is not only an issue, you know, overall, but specifically the black community deals with mental health issues a lot more at a higher rate than others. And so just even the way that you guys address issues is really smart. I mean, you're inside, that creative that creative people that are coming up with this stuff. Are they just trying to just be as authentic as possible because it's done well, but it's done like in a really smart way?
Yeah, I mean, the point of it is, we're telling human stories. It is half-hour comedy, so it's going to be funny, but not everything in life is funny, and not everything in life is a tragedy. Some things just are what they are. You know, Dealing with mental illness, man, it is what it is. That's just a part of life. And so, you know, in telling these stories of life in LA, it does it a disservice to make it some kind of diatribe that we all have to learn from this moment, or turning it into a spectacle. It's never really been about that, this show. So it's sort of, I guess it's just as much about in keeping with the theme of the show as much as it is not blowing anything out of proportion. Yes, it is. Unfortunately, it is revolutionary to show a black character dealing with mental illness
Crazy,
on
right?
screen. You know, However, we don't have to make it all about that. We can just show that that's a part of life, because it is. People have been dealing with mental illness for years. People just haven't been talking about it. So now all it's done, all this is showing what has always been, and just giving us room to talk about it.
Yeah, I know you've been very outspoken about being bipolar and maybe addressing and kind of empowering other people through your experiences. Can you talk about being almost like an advocate about that? Because again, not it's not that talked about. And so I'd just love to hear kind of, you getting behind this for yourself and kind of opening yourself up to help other people.
Yeah, man. I never really thought. I never really wanted to be an advocate.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like I'm sort of reluctant to be a role model for anything, because I'm human. I make mistakes. I screw up. I don't always feel the same way about everything. I changed my mind about things, you know. But when it came to, you know, mental health, you know, I realized I've been through some really tough times mentally over the past couple of years. And I realized that, you know, I could either pretend this doesn't exist. I could either pretend it's not here, it's not a part of me, of what I'm going through, and be alone with it. Every time something happens, I can ignore it and push it to the side and stifle it, or I can embrace the fact that it's a part of what I'm going through. It's a part of who I am. It's not all of who I am, but it's just a part of it, and that there are other people going through it as well, you know. And that's really what it was for me. Was just like I lying about it felt exhausting. And so I'd rather just be honest about it and just share that this is a part of, you know, what I have to deal with as a person. And, you know, if someone can see Andrew as cool, calm, and collected as he is, and everyone assumes that I'm the same person, and there's a lot of Andrew in me, a lot of me that goes into Andrew. If they can see that and then see that the actor who portrays that lives with bipolar and deals with bipolar, then they can start breaking down their own preconceptions of what bipolar is. That bipolar doesn't mean you're insane. Bipolar doesn't mean that you're screaming on the street, ripping your clothes up. You know what I mean? Like it's it's a lot of preconceived notions that have been built up because no one talks about it, because no one is willing to share the truth and say, you know what? Yeah, sometimes it's hard to get out of bed, but it doesn't mean that, you know, I'm a terrible person. It doesn't mean that I'm incapable of achieving things just because I live with this disorder.
You have absolutely achieved some great things already, you know, and I think that it's all part of this journey. And, you know, thank you for sharing that and talking about that. I'm curious, just we talk about more of you, the person, being an actor or getting to this point. There is no direct road to it for most people. There's all types of things that happen. So I'm wondering if you can shed some light. And yeah, you're gonna have to talk about yourself a lot now here. Maybe about your journey. You know, maybe some of the things that led you here. I read you played rugby for a while. But
Yeah.
you know, even maybe did any of your experiences in Australia inform you, or you know, I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey of becoming an actor, because for most people, myself included, this is the first time we've ever seen you and you're crushing it on Insecure. So, you know, what does
Thanks,
that
man.
journey look like for you? Everyone's is going to be different.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all supposed to learn from our experiences, you know, otherwise we're doomed to repeat them. So I think my experiences from Australia, from America, have all played into, you know, what I've done and where I'm at today. You know, I lived in New York for 6 years. I I was living in New York. I was a delivery boy. I was I was a nanny for a while. I was
Wow.
painting warehouses. You know, I've done every odd job that I could to get by just to pay the rent, and even times I couldn't make the rent. You know, that's just the reality of pursuing your dreams. You know, I think there's a fallacy of acting being this glamorous, glorious job. You know, it is like for like 1% of the time. You know, there is that 1% of the time where it's glamorous and glorious, and even then it's stressful because you're wearing clothes that don't belong to you. You're running late for an event that you're not really sure what it's about, and you have to smile and take photos with people that you don't really know who they are. That's the glamorous part of it. You know, that's what everyone sort of thinks it's all about, but it's really about the 99% of other things. You know, it's the 3 years or 30 years that it takes in the lead up for people to achieve. You know, I moved to New York. I left everything I had in Australia. You know, I had a career in marketing that I had the opportunity to go into. And
Corporate
I
Alex,
sort
right?
of right, you know, I turned it down because I didn't really feel fulfilled in it. You know, I was young. Maybe I was young and naive enough to think that, you know, fulfillment was important in life. But I turned it down, and I thought, worst case, I can come back to this in about 5 years, and in between now and then, let me just give acting a shot and see what works. And then I never looked back. Even when I didn't know if acting was going to work out, I never really thought about going back to marketing, because the moments that I did get to act were so fulfilling and so worth it for me. And it was just sort of affirming that I'm doing the right thing. I have no idea if I'm good at this thing or not. I have no idea if I'm going to get a career out of this, but it feels good. And if I can do it while I can, I'm going to do it.
Oh man, I mean, you're preaching to the choir here. That's just amazing to hear. Is there, also in the spectrum of actors, you're literally like, what, I don't even want to say an extinct animal, but there's like, there's, we're talking about, everyone talks about like, oh, when you talk about like, okay, people of color actors, women actors, like the Asian male actor, let's be real, in that hierarchy is the bottom, right? And those roles are so hard. It's when I talk about the availability of those roles, right? The amount of, and things are changing, being involved in projects, you see a little bit of tick of it, but I'm not saying is there any pressure on you, because, people will ask those type of questions, but what is kind of for you, how do you see yourself in that role? Because for me, it's like, look, being an Asian male in media, I don't think about I'm Asian. I'm just represent a slice of the pie. If people can pull something from that, they will. And I, like you, I want to do what I love as long as I can until I can't. Like, we're lucky to even be in that position, quite honestly.
Yeah.
Right? So for you, how do you kind of see, if you were saying I'm looking outside of, Alex, how would you kind of perceive your role in this whole thing? Because really, it's like you're like one of those extinct animals. Not that they were extinct, but just super rare fish in the sea. that that is swimming in this huge ocean and in a way upstream, even when landing amazing roles like this.
I don't want to. This is the thing. I don't want to say we're at the bottom, because we have a long way to go in terms of trans representation and actors with with disabilities. And even if you want to, if we're looking at ethnicities, Native American actors really have they have the tiniest slice of the pie. So I would say there's a lot of us down at the bottom fighting for scraps. That's what I would look at. There are a few ethnicities that are still, fighting against whitewashing in the 21st century, and we are one of those groups that is doing that. And it's mind blowing. It's mind blowing that whitewashing exists today. But unfortunately, that's just where we're at. So outside of myself, I do see a long way to go. I do see a long journey for us to travel. But I also do see the successes that we've had. I see the duality in celebrating what we have and also expecting more and demanding more. We're in a place right now where we are getting studio films, and as we should, and we're being able to tell stories that exist outside of the model minority. We're able to tell stories that push and challenge preconceived notions of our community, as we should be. We don't get enough. We don't have enough. We need more. But I think it's going to take a lot of people. I think it's going to take a lot of people who are in positions like mine, where through our work we're able to be more visible, and so it's our job to keep the door open and bring as many people through as we can, and to change the rooms that we enter. I think that's what it's supposed to look like for us.
Absolutely. Okay. Let's talk about maybe you outside of acting and things that you're into. Are there things that people? How about this? Maybe what's a myth or a thing that you'd like to debunk that maybe people might think about you or not? Something that you'd say this is not true, or this is not what it's like. We've already talked about how 1% of the time is really glamorous, and it's so true.
Yeah, I'm a boring person, dude. I'm so boring. Like, people like quarantine or not, I'm a boring fucking person. You know,
So
I'm a
quarantine
creature
didn't
of
change
habit.
you? Quarantine didn't change
Not
you?
so much. The only thing that quarantine, okay, this is the thing. The only thing that quarantine really changed for me is going to the gym and going to the cafe. That's it, man. Everything else, I'm at home really anyway. I'm watching movies. I'm going to the cinema. You know,
Mhm.
those are the three things that really changed. But other than that, I'm not partying. I don't go out on Saturday nights. You know, I'm not a clubber. You know, I don't drink. You know, I
Neither
don't.
do I. I'm actually
Yeah,
allergic. I'm
you're
not
allergic.
just Asian
Oh,
blush, not Asian blush allergic. Like I'm allergic. Probably worked in
wow.
my favor.
Yeah, true, true. I mean, look, man, you're saving money, you're saving calories, you're not giving yourself a hangover. How did
Yeah.
you find out that you were allergic to alcohol?
Well, what it is that okay, sure, people turn red, but I would start getting like itchy, you know,
Ah,
like really itchy. I wouldn't get hives. My body literally would shut down. It's not, and I'm not talking about like, oh, you drink 4 drinks and you might pass out. It's like a few sips, and someone could say it's a lightweight. There, my friends were like, power through, power through. Never worked. And so my friends learned like, don't let Brian drink because he's gonna be no fun, Brian. Like I'd literally start talking to
wow,
you with my eyes closed because I couldn't do it. And we're talking about like maybe a few sips, and
wow.
it just wasn't fun, right? What's fun
Yeah,
in
well,
that?
why would you do it? Why would you do it
Exactly.
if that's what happens
Exactly.
to you? Why would you
Why?
bother? Hangovers are a big enough question as to why you would even put yourself through that, let alone passing out after a couple of sips.
Getting
Um,
itchy. Oh no, it's not good. Not
yeah,
good.
man. So maybe you get it. Like I'm a really boring person. I don't have that interesting a life, you know. I think the one thing that you know sort of being in this in the public eye sort of allows you is access. You know, that's a cool thing, you know, like but you know, at the end of the day, I'm still just texting memes to my friends. I'm still just like sitting at home trying to figure out what the hell I'm gonna have for dinner tonight. You know, it's nothing magically changed for me.
You really are leaning into that 1% glamorous right now, bro.
Dude, and that 1% is like right now in quarantine, that 1% got taken away. So it's like, what are you gonna do? What do you have now?
I saw on Twitter you had jokingly said that you got a podcast mic, or you
I
have one.
did.
Are you thinking about
Using it
getting
right
into
now.
podcasting?
Do I
Or is
sound
that what
really?
you're using right now? You sound great.
Do I? Let me. I don't, okay,
It's
so
because
I
it's a
still
little
don't really
further
know
away
what
from
this
you,
works.
but you still sound good.
Okay, well, what if I do this? What if I turn the gain up? Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, but I was gonna turn the gain up in post anyways.
Oh wow. Okay, so I'm gonna turn it back to where it was.
No,
So
it's good.
that's
And actually, the way you turned it up is actually a little better.
okay. Well, why didn't you tell me? I
No,
got
it's
this
not. You're
podcast,
not
Mike. You're
faint.
supposed to
You're
tell
not
me.
faint. It's not. If it was bad, I would have told you. If your shot
Okay,
looked like crap, I would have been like, I'm not gonna make you look like this. No, I'm looking out for you too, bro.
appreciate you. Okay, so yes, I got this. I got what's called the Blue Yeti microphone.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yep.
Yes, not as serious as your one,
Yep,
but this
I have a
one
blue yeti
is.
too. Yeah.
You do?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
this is the most serious microphone I've ever had. Um, I got it because of quarantine. Because you know, yes, I've thought about having a podcast, but I mean, I don't really have enough to say consistently to have a podcast. I don't think I would just run out of things to say. Um, but I got it because I'm doing a lot of this stuff, a lot of interviews, a lot of podcasts at home, and I did one early on in quarantine, and I used my AirPod microphone, and the quality was really bad, and I was the only one. This is a terrible. This is just like how my brain works. I was the only one who sounded really bad, and I was like never again. And so I went and I got a podcast microphone so I can sound bearable to listen to during podcasts and interviews.
That's amazing. Yeah. So, I mean, you could podcast what I ate today, but I'm sure that may not
That
have that many legs after a certain amount of minutes.
remember when Instagram like devolved into just food pics? Remember that phase
Yeah,
of
it's still
Instagram?
there, but yeah.
Yeah, it's still there, but thankfully it's expanded a bit more. But like you would just jump on and all your feed would be was lunch. That's what my podcast would be. People would be like so over it in the first week.
I don't know because we Asian foodies, I mean, one of the
True.
archetypes of being Asian tends to be just a hardcore foodie. We will
That's
seek
true. But
out
see,
the best food.
Dave Chang already has that on lock though. He's
Fine. Then get on his show. Get your people. Look, I know that being on Insecure, like you said, more access has opened up more doors and more meetings for you. I know that has. Don't tell me it hasn't. So, hey, find out who his people are. Like, let's grub. Let's get Insecure. Let's go.
Man, your mouth to God's ears. I'll be down to grab some grub with Dave Chang.
That's good. Well, Andrew, I just want to say thank you so much again for the time. It was great talking to you. The Emmys announcement, sorry if I'm wrong, is it September 20th? Is that when it's happening? Do you know even?
I have no idea.
Sure, let's call it that.
Yeah. And if we're wrong, we're wrong.
Yeah, but continued success. And I do know, this is not a spoiler, from what I've read, it appears that Andrew should be appearing in season 5. It wasn't the last we saw of you. Can you confirm that or not?
You know more than me, it sounds like.
No way.
Anything about next season. They're still writing it. How are announcements made? They're still writing it.
I don't know. I just saw it. Maybe, you know what? We know how the internet works now. Someone just like Alexander Hodge returning for season 5. And then it somehow populates.
Somebody's speaking it into existence. And I appreciate that person. Thank you for speaking that into existence. We'll see. I don't know. So I can't confirm or deny anything. But
awesome, man. Well, hey, thanks again for the time and just wishing you the best of success. I can't even talk right now. Just keep on crushing it. And we appreciate that.
Thanks, man. And likewise, best of luck to you.
Thank you, man. All right, cool.
All right, peace, man.
Take care.